Tanzanian Mystery, Chapter 2, Travel to Tanzania. After weeks of dreaming, guidebook reading, and several evenings spent with Scarlett watching documentaries about Africa featuring Bear Grylls, who Scarlett happened to find handsome, the big day finally arrived. Mary had packed and repacked her backpack countless times. She had not been able to make up her mind about what to take and had eventually decided to just cram as many changes of clothes into her bag as she could manage. Her outfit choices consisted of brightly coloured t-shirts, shorts, sandals, hiking trainers, sweaters in case it got cold in the evenings, and practical zip-off trousers that could also be turned into shorts. She chose her favourite 2 guidebooks and a couple of novels to take in her carry-on bag, along with her camera, passport, spending money, a large wad of tissues and wet wipes, and boiled sweets to eat on the journey. Mary brushed her frizzy hair and changed into her travel outfit of a dark blue fleece, sensible trainers, and one of her beloved pairs of zip-off trousers. She was just checking she had not forgotten anything when the doorbell rang. Scarlett stood on the doorstep looking excited. Her long blonde hair was neatly styled. She wore subtle makeup, black leggings, a bright pink hoodie, and a large sun hat, despite the weather being cold and rainy yet again. Her hands rested on the handle of a shiny red suitcase, which matched her handbag. "What's that for?" Mary asked, surprised. "It's called a suitcase, Mary. We use them to put our clothes in when we go on holiday," Scarlett replied sarcastically. "Yes, but you should take a sensible rucksack when you go camping in Africa," Mary replied in a matter-of-fact tone. "But we're not trekking through the jungle," Scarlett laughed. "We're going straight from the airport to the lodge, which looks very comfortable and has lovely paths to roll suitcases along." At that moment, Mary's housemate Jemima appeared, wearing a rain jacket over the top of her pajamas, looking bleary-eyed and holding a large travel mug of coffee. "I still don't know why you wanted to leave so early," Jemima mumbled sleepily. "It was Mary's idea," Scarlett answered quickly. "She has some kind of fear of public transport." "No, I don't," Mary protested. "I just wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time to get to the train station, in case there is any traffic, especially with your driving skills, Jemima." "Thanks," Jemima replied grumpily, ignoring the joke. She unlocked her car, helped Mary and Scarlett to squeeze their luggage into the boot, then set off. They arrived at the train station within 10 minutes, which gave them plenty of time to spare before their train to London. Mary had insisted on getting an earlier train than necessary, in case there were any delays or cancellations that could mean missing their 9:35 p.m. flight from Heathrow. In the end, Scarlett had found it easier to go along with Mary's plan, as at least they would be able to fit in a few hours of shopping in London before they would need to get to the airport. As their train ride to London was problem-free, despite Mary's previous worries, the two women had plenty of time for a short trip on the Underground to see some London landmarks. They were lucky to find that the rain had not followed them, and that blue skies and warm, early spring sunshine awaited them. Despite her excitement for sightseeing and window shopping, Mary struggled and panted with the weight of carrying her large backpack around. "Whose bag is more sensible now?" asked Scarlett merrily, as she easily wheeled her own suitcase along the ground, only needing to carry it when they came across steps or some particularly bumpy cobbles. "Humph," was Mary's disgruntled reply. They stopped for lunch at a pretty cafe near Covent Garden. Scarlett had visited London several times and knew the city well, whereas Mary had only been once before, so she reluctantly consented to Scarlett leading the way on their short tour, although the cafe was much more expensive than the usual places that Mary visited. When the 2 women had become tired of walking around London with their cases, they got the Underground to Heathrow and checked in for their flight. Mary was relieved to not have to carry her heavy backpack around any longer, and sat massaging her shoulders in an airport cafe while Scarlett played games on her tablet. This happened to be another item which Mary thought was unnecessary for their African adventure. Africa has electricity too, you know. Scarlett laughed at Mary's objections. But we will be staying in a tent, Mary reminded her in a matter-of-fact tone. A luxury safari tent, Scarlett corrected her. There were lamps in the brochure pictures, so I'm sure there will be plug sockets. After a long wait in the airport, they were finally able to board their plane. Mary waved goodbye to England as they took off and eagerly looked out of the window at the scenery, although, as it was night time, she was unable to see anything interesting. The 12-hour flight passed slowly. Most of the passengers, including Scarlett, quickly fell asleep when the cabin lights were turned off shortly after the meal was served. Mary, however, felt too cramped and restless to sleep much, so she watched several films on the flight entertainment system. She also enjoyed frequent trips to the back of the plane to collect the drinks and snacks that the flight attendants had left on a tray for the passengers. Unfortunately, one particular steward became suspicious after seeing Mary coming to collect snacks for the 4th time and glared at her each time she approached after that, making the shy woman feel uncomfortable and return to her seat empty-handed. Feeling despondent at being denied any further snacks, Mary finally managed to fall asleep just 30 minutes before all of the passengers were awoken by the cabin lights being switched on again. One of the flight attendants cheerfully announced that breakfast would soon be served, which irritated the now overly tired Mary, while Scarlett began to feel excited that they would be landing soon. A breakfast of strangely congealed sausages and eggs and lukewarm teas and coffees were distributed, just as the passengers saw a dazzling, vibrant orange dawn breaking through the cabin windows. The plane began its descent shortly after the breakfast things had been tidied away. As the plane got closer to the airport, passengers began to exclaim and gasp in wonder at the sight of Mount Kilimanjaro's snow-capped peak rising majestically above the clouds. Mary sighed contentedly as the plane continued to descend beneath the clouds, losing sight of Mount Kilimanjaro and revealing views of fields and houses. Finally, they landed on the dusty runway to the applause and cheers of some flyers. All of the passengers were eager to disembark the plane and stretch their legs after such a long flight, and many hastily jumped up to retrieve their bags from the overhead lockers while the plane was still taxiing, much to the disapproval of the flight attendants who kept urging people to sit down. Mary glanced irritably around the plane, frowning at her fellow passengers. There were a few groups of tourists, most of whom looked just as eager about their holiday as she did. There were also several African people on board the plane, wearing dresses or suits made from bold, patterned and brightly coloured fabrics. Mary wondered why she hadn't noticed people wearing these outfits as they boarded the plane, and strongly suspected that they had gotten changed in the bathrooms shortly before landing. Don't be silly, you just didn't see those outfits because everyone was wearing jackets before, laughed Scarlett when Mary pointed out her theory. When the pilot announced that the passengers were free to leave the aircraft, Mary and Scarlett jumped up with the other passengers and eagerly disembarked, breathing in the fresh, warm, earthy African air on the steps down from the plane to the tarmac. The airport was quite small, so there was no need for the buses or long walkways from the plane to the terminal that you find at other international airports. The passengers here simply walked the short distance across the hot tarmac to the arrivals hall. The two women collected their cases, which to Mary's relief had not been lost in transit, despite her fears about her luggage being put on the wrong plane and arriving in another country. They then joined the long line for passport and visa checking before going to look for the private plane that would take them to their hotel in the Serengeti National Park. Mary found a whiteboard with the flight numbers, destinations and departure times for the private plane companies, handwritten in different coloured marker pens. She presumed that each plane company used a different colour on the board to make it easier for their passengers to spot, and noticed that their flight time happened to be written in green. Seeing that they still had 30 minutes until their flight, The two women settled down on some chairs to wait, near to an overly enthusiastic group of American tourists. As it was already hot, despite still being early in the morning, Mary decided to take the opportunity to unzip the lower part of her trousers, turning them into shorts and revealing her pale legs, while Scarlett looked amused. Feeling that it was no longer the weather for leggings and a fluffy hoodie, she went to the bathroom to change into a pale blue summer dress and flip-flops.